Everybody, welcome back to the Hardtech podcast. I'm your host, DeAndre with my usual suspect, Grant Chapman,
How's it going, everybody?
CEO of Glassport, a hardware product development firm located right here in Indianapolis. Today, we have a super exciting guest in Tristen Hazlett from Hinckley Medical. How are you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you guys doing today?
Doing fantastic. So for the folks that are just now tuning in, could you give us a brief overview of yourself and the company as well?
Yeah, my name is Tristen Hazlett, founder, CEO of a company called Hinckley Medical, and we build hardware and software into like the ambulance space. So hopefully you don't need our stuff, but if you do, you're in good hands being in an ambulance.
And Tristen, your origin story, one of the reasons we were really excited about this podcast was just, honestly, you reminded me a lot of myself. Starting in college, it was actually a college project of yours, right? You've actually evolved it out, grown it out of the university, and turned it into a pretty successful business. Would love to kind of hear that origin story.
Yeah, super fun. So really the origin had a conversation with a family member, and family member was going through paramedic school, and it was started complaining to me about being bad at guessing people's weights. And as an engineering student at the time, thinking I can solve every problem in the world, I was like, that's stupid, like don't guess people's weights, just put them on the scale. Like obviously there has to be a way to obtain these. And truth be told, I thought that was for sure just him, again, being stupid. But it wasn't. This is actually a thing in EMS where paramedics and EMTs don't have a way to obtain people's weights in the field, instead relying on estimation methods, such as guessing, which is an actual skill that's often trained. Again, this is to no fault of the EMTs and paramedics alone. It's just a technology problem that we felt as though we could come solve. So that was about my sophomore year of college. Junior year of college, did market research for a while, tried to figure out basically, is this a local problem or is this an everywhere problem? Why is this a problem? Why isn't this having been solved? It seems pretty obvious to me. And then senior year, actually kind of started working on a company before my senior design project and was able to sponsor my own senior design project using some capital that we got through the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, where I went to school, innovation side of things. So the origin story, probably similar to many, different than others, whereas it's kind of an idea that I always knew I wanted to be into entrepreneurship. And, this is definitely a space that I find interesting because it also scratches that, like feel good itch. Like I want to make a positive impact on people's lives as well. And, med tech, especially in the EMS space, is, very underserved when it comes to technology.
Absolutely. I'm curious, why is it so important to know the weight? What aspect of that EMS experience do you need to know that I'm 250, 260 as opposed to 300?
Yeah, especially important for pediatric patients. Medication dosages vary depending upon a person's weight. So best way we can describe it to like a non-clinical audience is basically like, imagine giving like a 5-year-old like 3 beers versus a 300-pound adult male 3 beers. It has like the same effect on the patient, but at the different magnitudes, right? Especially if someone's, has that alcohol tolerance very built up. That's why, especially for like pediatric patients, it's also can be important for adults depending upon the med, but also for elderly patients that may be more fragile. It is important for specific dosing when it comes to like paralytics, potentially like fentanyl, pain management, ketamine, different medications such as that.
Well, I think it's one of those things that the smaller you are, the more accurate you have to be in the same percentage, right or wrong, in guessing someone's weight, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, if you are 300 pounds, I can be off by 30 pounds in either direction. That's only like 10%. But if you are 100 pounds soaking wet and you're off by 30 pounds, that's 30%. That is like, crazy amounts of difference in dosage. And I think that scales, which gets really tough for the EMS and the paramedics trying to guess weight of like, you're going to want to guess on the safe side, but is that safe medically, right? Hey, I'm going to, underdose this person, but is that going to give them way more pain than they have to deal with on the way to the hospital? Or is that even going to, treat their anaphylaxis if that's what they're suffering from? Like all those different, metrics are tough to guess on.
Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of EMS studies are roughly around 20% plus or minus is considered critical dosing error if you're outside that. So you're 100% right. It's based off percentage, right? It's not based off a standard pound. So if you're talking about a 3-month-old patient that's roughly 20 kilograms, you'd have to be very precise.
Yep.
If you're talking about a 300-pound patient, like you said, plus minus 20%, it's like 60 pounds.
Yep.
So again, that's where it comes in to pediatric patients, specifically elderly patients as well, even small adults. It's important and it's hard to, again, these EMS professionals are technologically underserved, so they're kind of forced into doing this, and they do have their own methods of dealing with it. But there's a reason you can do it at a carnival, right? Because it's hard to do. It's like some people can do it. I've met like one or two that are pretty good at it, but the vast majority of people self-admit that they're not extremely good at estimating people's weights. And again, all this, it just seems silly because it's been on the ED, like med scales for like a better part of a decade. That this hasn't made it, the technology hasn't made it onto EMS is just kind of like another signal that there's a lot of room for innovation in this space.
Right. Well, and I think that one of the things you stumbled across, you just said, hey, this core technology has been in the hospital for a long time. You guys just had to go make it mobile, right? And this is the challenge, and this is like the IoTification of everything. IoTifying things is pretty easy when it stays in one place, right? You have wall power, you can power it forever, battery life doesn't matter. I can have wired comms to an Ethernet port.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden when you're like, I need to make this mobile, and like everything gets hard. It's hard mode, battery life, ingress protection, durability.
I'm curious too. So Tristen, as you we have a really good understanding of the problem. So maybe we can start diving into like the actual solution, how you solved this problem with both the hardware and the software component that you've had to integrate together.
Yeah. I'll focus heavily on the hardware side of things, and you're 100% right. The amount of barriers that we had to bring in this hardware to market. One, it's FDA regulated, right? That's a big one. But just the technological design aspects of it. I mean, it's like waterproofing. Like if I have to make one more case for an electronic component, like I might just quit engineering. It's like for a while there, my job was solely making like watertight cases for electrical components in like a big system.
Is waterproofing
and that was
stuff
months?
Not the worst.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, Chris, I got one more question.
Yeah.
Waterproof cases or finding the right connector for the application, which is worse?
Oh man. Oh wow. Wow, that's a tough one. Probably waterproofing.
Yeah.
Because at least you don't have to, do the waterproofing usually yourself, or do the connector like assembly yourself. But yeah, try to find the right connectors that are in the waterproof connecters. Like if you can find me like any sort of high number of pin waterproof connector that's not absolutely massive, that's something new, right? If you do that, you're going to be very successful.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
shout out to anyone.
Perfect.
Shout out to anyone looking to build a company. Like good waterproof cheap connectors. Let's go.
Yeah, waterproof cheap and high pin number counts. You'd be onto something there for sure. Yeah, and DeAndre, you asked a question. I think I.
Oh yeah, totally. Diving into just the actual product itself and how it's how people use it, how you've developed that journey in and of itself.
Yeah. So it's a patient scale, FDA regulated, but 510(k) pre-approved, meaning we didn't have to go through the FDA process to sell it, but we have to comply to all the FDA regulations. It attaches to the top face of ambulance gurney. So if you're watching TV or watching ER or all those newer shows, it's like the big yellow gurney at the thing with wheels. We attach to the top face of that. And we basically just take the patient's distributed weights, run it through not just all the load cells added together, but there's some filtering and there's an equation, like an exact equation that they have to do and all there. But it's attached to the gurney. So the patient gets on the gurney, we get the patient weight, and what's that they're able to do any sort of medication dosage calculations and things like that as well.
And so just breaking that down for everyone that needs a theater of the mind, you've got a gurney and you guys have built a multiple sections of your device or platforms of your device that cover the gurney, because the gurney moves, right? It can tilt upright, it can tilt flat. It's really hard to cover one surface with a rigid piece. You have to be able to move. So you're adding up all these weights or loads across your sectors is what I might call them. And then you guys are running math to say, okay, I need to subtract this overage because it's being read on two different sectors and calculate the patient weight. And then that goes to your central processing unit on your piece of IoT. And then how does that get to be used by the user?
Yeah. So kind of starting from the beginning, if you take a mattress off an ambulance gurney, you may notice there's 3 to 4 separate panels, right? So basically what we did is we created one individual cover on top of these panels, like almost matching the dimensional space cell pretty accurately, and put in a minimum of 4 load cells on each of those, all to be controlled by kind of like a master control panel at the head. So there's 18 different sensors on there, and the leap of technology wasn't necessarily how do I make a load cell read accurately, right? You do that in probably a measurements class in college, senior year or junior year. But how do you get 18 of them to read accurately? And importantly, how do you do so without having to spend $50 per load cell?
Mm-hmm.
So really the problem didn't become, I mean, obviously there's the whole waterproofing and connectors and headache there. But the fun part of the problem was kind of the signal conditioning side of things. It's like, how far can you condition a signal before you basically lose the signal itself? And how fast can you filter that out? And how can you make it, just grab the most relevant information, and how much averaging can you do without using too much battery life? And that was a really fun problem to solve, right? And like, how do you improve battery life based off of basically like turning these on and off really rapidly? And what does that look like when you turn something on and off rapidly through a bunch of filters? It all came out to be signal conditioning, kind of electrical engineering problem, with the headaches of waterproofing and connectors, stuff like that. But the system itself, 18 load cells, we started by creating a system that just lays flat. So if you know anything about a distributed load, right? If you're laying something flat like this and you have a bunch of different panels, you're just going to take the straight up normal force coming from that, add it all together, and it's going to equal the patient's weight. But what happens with ambulance gurneys and patients is, this example of someone's throwing up, right? Your friend's throwing up, whatever reason, maybe unconscious, you're going to turn them on their side so they don't, choke on their own vomit. It's the same thing for EMS or situations in which you can't have a patient flat. You have to raise them up.
Mm-hmm.
And so as soon as that happens, it blows the whole normal force calculation out of the water. So what we did is I took back out literally my statics, my book in my sophomore year. It was so fun. I remember thinking in that class, like, I'm never going to use this. Why am I even paying attention? But promise, pay attention in school. Sometimes you will use it. So I took that out, kind of did the mathematical equation for a static body on top of different, basically things that work like that. And that's kind of what we have now, is that we have a measurement where if the patient's flat, right, we can read like that. But as soon as you go up, it's basically like a predictive statics equation where we basically predict the backrest angle.
Mm-hmm.
And based off of that, and making a couple assumptions, it's actually really only like 1 or 2 assumptions. We're able to accurately basically predict the patient's weight to plus minus 3% in the kind of FDA model, but realistically, it's much more accurate than that in a laboratory environment.
That's awesome. And then do you guys have like an IMU or a magnetometer, like get that angle? Like, do you have a gyro to get what that angle is? Or are you guys truly just doing it off the distribution of the load and empirically testing and say, hey, we think here's our equation for if we see 80% of the load increase on this one panel, they're likely upright because humans are usually X amount of uniform across these panels?
Yeah, that is a fantastic question. So actually, we found that that's not necessary, because just the distribution of the patient's weight based off the statics equation was able to compensate for it actually helped us compensate for like any assumptions that are like mildly variable,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes to like the friction assumptions in there. But by not having that backrest angle, like gyroscope or something to actually calculate what that is, we were able to predict the weight more accurately, which was very surprising for us. To be honest, I still can't quite wrap my head around why that is. But based off of like year of empirical, like in the field data, it was more accurate to do it that way.
Yeah, and that's all that matters, right? I love that thing in engineering. Like,
yeah.
Actually, I don't really understand why we can do this as well as we can, but it works every time. So let's send it.
Yeah. And I mean, like theoretically, it makes sense because it's basically, you can like wrap your head around it behind the physics. So you would think just having more information would make it more accurate, which is actually not the case, because again, it's signal conditioning exercise, more components. Like, how do you kind of make sure that angle is reading accurately? What happens if you're on a hill? And all those things kind of came into the factor where it's like, well, it was actually less helpful than we expected to see.
Yeah, more variables of the equation makes the equation harder, even if it might make it more accurate if you could solve it, right? But like,
exactly. Yeah.
Zooming back out, so we've got patient weight. We've established we've got that, and all these really cool like angles and way you can any way the patient's laying on it, you can capture that. I'm an EMS. How do I use the patient's weight, or how do I access that data? What was your journey from like Was it like cell phone connected app first, and then you got a display, or vice versa, or like where have you gotten now to like actually like put that information to use for the EMS?
Yeah, very early on, we kind of got asked that question. So even before we got launched our products, like, okay, yeah, patient weight's helpful, but what you use it for is kind of like the reason that it would be, powerful for them, right? So our scale does have an LCD screen on it, pretty standard. Just if you think bathroom scale type output, right? It's going to be kilograms, pounds. It's going to tell you your weight. It's going to lock into place. But we also can send that information over via Bluetooth connection, which introduces a number of other data variables that we can capture, such as like patient on the gurney, patient off the gurney, patient, fighting, or like a lot of movement in there, or patient being perfectly still. Like we can tell how bumpy the ride was. We can tell like what type of patient it is usually, right? Because there's very little, not so often like you get like a 300-pound pediatric patient, and like most likely be a male adult. You can have some estimations in there. And we take this information and we send it to what we call our one-dose app. So our one-dose app kind of is like, just think of like a tool or an application that'll help paramedics when they're with the patient, right? So with this, they'll be able to send over patient weight. And if they need to do a weight-based calculation, they don't have to take out the phone calculator. They're able just to say, I just need to draw this in the milliliters. So our software is very focused around helping paramedics limit liability, cognitive offloading, quality improvements, and all focused around while you're with the patient, not as much so on the operation of that.
No, that's great. So I'm an EMS. I put my patient on my gurney. I wheel them into our ambulance, and we're driving to the hospital, and I need to get them something for the allergic reaction they're having. I can go to my one-dose app, type in the drug I'm looking for, right? Norepinephrine or whatever it is. It's like, oh, I got my weight from the scale. He is a 200-pound male. Is he a male? Yes, correct. Okay, here's your math. Here's how many milliliters or milligrams to dose. Go do that. And that's helping take the liability off that EMS, because they're not doing that mental math. They're not guessing the weight and guessing the multiplication in their head to act fast. They're recording this. The steps are recorded. The knowledge of what data is being acted on is recorded. So now the only thing left in like a malpractice suit would be, did he literally just grab the wrong vial or the wrong dose out of the box is the only one left.
Yeah, so absolutely right. And I'll throw in a little background knowledge on EMS as a whole. They're under the Department of Transportation, not under the Department of Health. So what that means is their liability is actually oftentimes more, especially on the criminal side of things, than the liability of like a nurse or PA or doctor inside the ER. So there's cases in the United States here in which paramedics, either whether the mistake be honest mistake or there's some maliciousness involved, that's kind of outside of it, but like a wrong medication grab, right? With that, even if it is an accident, they could potentially be facing such things of like manslaughter charges. So liability is a very prominent thing in EMS right now, and these are people that aren't necessarily making a lot of money while doing so either. So having tools such as our self-rules helps them, not necessarily like with their patients, whether it be just in their facility transport or return, but with those critical patients where a lot of that stress is on and where a lot of potential errors could happen with dosage calculations and knowing what ones to get, everything like that.
I think it's really cool, like just the overall impact that your product's having. I think that you guys are deployed over 27 states. And what's like the feedback you're getting, like with all this in mind, from those EMS teams that are like using the software and the actual product itself?
Yeah, a lot of our feedback, as you can probably imagine, is very positive. I mean, people want something that they can rely on in the field, especially with patients where it can be, a little scary, like pediatric patients. And, the thing that keeps us going is like when a paramedic reaches out and say, hey, we just used your full system on a pediatric patient that was getting helicoptered out of you, right? Where that's like the absolute most critical case. Like pediatric patient, helicopters coming, like that means every moment matters. And knowing that they use our solution in there and that it made a difference to that patient, that's the feel good stories that really keep not just me, but our whole team and the whole mission of what we're trying to do going. So that feedback's awesome. And then this feedback of, honestly, we knew we were kind of onto something when it first started with, oh, this is really cool, right? I can will my patient and just figure out how much medication to get based off of that, And then as soon as you start reaching the category of, I want to be able to, don't know what I'll do without this anymore. Like you kind of become a little bit reliant on it in a good way, not like a bad way where people are letting technology take over by any means. But that's definitely, it's a feel good, and that's how we know we're going in the direction.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's awesome. And then, like, how has the journey been in the world of Hardtech? And we always joke hard, it's in the name. But, like, how was that, like, crawl, walk, run journey from, like, your first set of prototypes at school to your first one that you sold for money to the ones that you're proud to sell for money now, right? Because it's always that journey. Like, the first one you sell for money isn't the one you're proud to sell for money now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, oh, man, that journey, it's quite a wild ride. You're right. We launched our software beginning of 2024, and software is extremely different. So the hardware journey is it is long and can be grueling, but it's incredibly rewarding as well, right? So starting in the lab in college, just trying to figure out what this even looks like, right? The actual shape of it, where is it going to attach to the gurney? How don't we void the warranty? Am I using load cell, or can I do something else? Like there's an idea of, potentially just having an inflated pad and measuring the difference of pressure in there. Instead of having 18 load cells, then you have 3 sensors that are just as pressure will take your built. So I went through a bunch of iterations like that. Kind of came on to something that attaches to the top face. It's like easy to get to, easy to recalibrate. Doesn't void the warranty because you use pre-existing folds. You don't have to unscrew anything. You just kind of leave it on there. And that iteration from iteration, it was a fun journey. We launched our first field trial in the beginning of 2022. And I still remember looking back on those times and like arriving on scene, like this is, an agency that's going to help us out. Like they're going out of their way to do it. They have people on there. And like the one time we came there and we pressed the power button, and then there must have been electrical short or something like that. And for just like,
the magic smoke comes out of one of the boxes. You're like, well, we're done for tonight. And like, oh, don't you have a spare in the truck? And you're like, this is one of one.
This is 101. We'll talk to you next week. Yeah. So there was a lot of, PTSD built up from going to a place and like just when we're the ones that are pressing the on button to being like, come on. And then once it's finally consistently did that, that's definitely an indicator that you're at least not a bad engineer. From there to getting our first sale in the middle of 2023 was roughly around probably 14 field trials. The first of which was very much so, well, let's just see what happens. Like, obviously, they're not going to use this for anything besides just see if it works in the field.
Yeah, and you're engaging like user feedback at that point, right? Not like less sales, more user feedback.
Yeah, not sales. Yeah, there's no way someone's paying money for that. But the user feedback is extremely helpful. It's not even, at that point, it also wasn't even necessarily about the accuracy of the system. It was just about, in this spot, as it's being used underneath the mattress, like what potential issues do you have, right? You're raising the top face, you have arm rails, that can be an issue. And just getting that preliminary feedback from people like that we partnered with was extremely valuable. And going down that iteration 14 times, the design changed substantially. Very, very much so substantially from just different requirements to pop in and out. Where it's like, nope, too heavy. Nope, too high. Nope, needs to be able to remove easily because patients leak underneath mattresses all the time.
Has to be
so
cleanable.
Then it's waterproofing. Yeah, then it's like, well, you also can't have anything with latex or any allergic reaction stuff and it's medical as well. And all this while maintaining good compliance with the FDA, good manufacturing practices, with documentation practicing. That's why it took 3.5 years to get it to market.
Yep.
And then even that first one that we sold, it worked. It was good, but it was raw still. It was not any of the good flashy stuff that we have on there. It's now placards and different colors.
Well, it's amazing.
Fancy paint jobs.
It's amazing how long it takes to find all of the corner cases, is the word I will use. Right? Like, you as the engineer in a lab is like, oh yeah, this works every time I turn it on. It works every perfectly way. And then you give it to a user and you start cringing as they start doing things that you don't do to it. And they break it in any way. They break the connector off the edge because the way they folded it up isn't the same that you would fold it up because there's a fragile connector there. Right? And it's that journey of watching your users break your stuff over and over and over again. until you finally made it bulletproof. It's like making your house like pet proof or child proof. You don't really know how to do it until you have kids or pets.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, that looks like a danger right now. We need to fix that. And you're slowly working your way through this prototype that becomes production. And all of a sudden you're really proud of it. And out of that, how much are you guys making in-house now versus contract manufacturing versus how much you did back then? Because I think this journey is always enlightening, where sometimes people start contract manufacturing at the very first time they're selling, like, I lied, we need to bring this back in-house to iterate quickly and then get it back out for contract manufacturing again. And where were you in that journey?
Yeah, we had a couple of good advisors that I think really helped. I'm a first-time founder, started right out of school, so I don't have a lot of experience. So we never actually outsourced our contract manufacturing. We do everything in-house, kind of final assembly. Like best way to describe it is kind of like puzzle piece. Like we outsource potential sub-assemblies in there, and we do final assembly in-house. But being able to iterate that fast is absolutely necessary. I'm talking 2023 all the way through 2024, just figuring that out and doing everything in-house. And we have the luxury of being a medical device as well. We're pretty low volume. Right? We're not there's never going to be a time where we need to ship out 10,000 of these a month. We're just not that. We're a B2B, very specific niche. There's only 100,000 ambulance gurneys in the United States, roughly, maybe up to 120. So there's never going to be a time in which we're shipping 10,000 itself. So by having it in-house, maintaining quality control, really helpful, maintaining FDA compliance, really helpful. There's definitely things that are more a headache, like maintaining your own inventory and knowing how long lead times are. And now with obviously a tariff, kind of figuring out, okay, when is this going to be more potentially going to a different place overseas to get some of the electrical components, which we can't even get here in the United States. Not that I'm in the avenue of giving advice, but anything, if it's low volume, the more you can maintain control of those design iterations and de-assemble in-house. Even it was literally me doing the assembly for 2.5 years, right? I was literally doing it. Your product's going to come out the other side better, because there's things that I changed that potentially not hurt, but complicated design requirements because the manufacturing isn't possible. We're talking waterproofing. We can't have 16 ingress points and expect to waterproof something without having water come in. You know what I mean? So that's just let's just protect the vital stuff by making cases for electrical components and make sure everything else is waterproof from there. So by doing everything, it definitely helps. And honestly, it's the best. So you're dividing something, you're assembling it, you tell yourself you suck, and then you go back and do that about 200 more times, and then maybe you have something to produce a full trial with.
We think that's so important at Glassport as well. All of our engineers are their own technicians, right? They're the ones. The MEs are cleaning up their own 3D prints and assembling their own prototypes. The EEs are building their own circuit boards and harnesses. I mean, everyone's building harnesses because the EEs or the MEs like to build harnesses with connectors. So it's always drawing straws, and whoever loses gets to go build that week's harness set. But you learn really well how to make good manufacturable parts if you have to go embrace the suck and build the ones you built the first time that are impossible to get to that screw. So you have an Allen key at the worst angle, hooked in there, and if you slip it, you're done. You strip the screw and it's all over.
Oh man, I will never use the Phillips screw again. How many times I've stripped a Phillips screw when attaching something to a gurney and had to drill it out, and then just breaking drill bits. It's torques or nothing for me anymore. It's only gonna be high torques, quality, grade,
high engagement torques bits.
Yeah, exactly. I'll never use a standard Phillips again.
This is so good. I love this episode because we almost never actually get to the nitty gritty of how awful it is to prototype in these painful lessons. This is so good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's, and honestly, they're so fun. You do learn a lot of those lessons. And again, being able to assemble yourself and embracing the suck, I love that term as well. It does help you because someone's going to have to assemble, right? And the more difficult something is to assemble, naturally, the less quality you're going to have on the back end, just because difficulty always equals issues, and issues always equal lack of quality. So if you find that you're having trouble doing it and you're the one that designed it, imagine someone that didn't design it or maybe doesn't have an engineering degree at all. That's just helping putting this together. Right? It really does help, and I loved it too. So I do it sometimes. If I really all right, let's do a design change on this, I'm going to for sure assemble the first couple myself, make sure I'm not straight anything up.
And Tristen, on the subject of embracing the suck as well, on your fundraising journey. So I think I saw that you got like what, $500 for your senior project, and you went on to raise a little bit over $1 million for your pre-seed round or your seed round. And where are you at in time and space now, and how big is the company?
Yeah, so that's actually very funny. So first $500 from school, to closing kind of like a $1.1 million like friends and family pre-seed, whatever. To now we're actually just now closing the $1.5 million pre-seed round. So we are just closing that now, literally this week.
Congrats.
And we have roughly around, thank you. Yeah. Raising money is also tough, but different types of stuff. We have 10 people. We have 5 engineers, only 3 of which ever do any engineering, and we're going to keep it that way. And 3 sales reps, a couple developers, assembly associate that does assembly now, and a few part-time people to help us with onboarding and things like that.
Oh, that's awesome. That is such a fun staff size. I remember when we were about that big, and it is like you were just at the level you can still fly by the seat of your pants on everything. Like you don't actually have to have every single procedure or vacation policy or anything written down, because you're all just working together every day, and it's in everyone's head rent free. And you as the CEO can just manage things in real time every day. You have a touch point with every employee every day, at least for 5 minutes, right? And like it's that really painful barrier you cross over between like 15 and 20 that all of a sudden everything has to get out of your head on paper. All of it. Not just your manufacturing quality docs, which you already have to have on paper because you're GMP, but all the things you do as a founder are no longer just yours to run because the team's too big and you need coverage. And that's a fun gap. But again, I think that where you're at is fantastic. And again, you guys are designing your own parts, you're assembling them, you're working with manufacturers across the world that some are circuit boards. I'm sure you have some plastic parts or machine parts or things like that. And you've got that full experience with the supply chain, and now scaling is fun because you've done everything once.
Yeah. It is. I mean, the best, circling back to the number of employees, I mean, the best company in the world would be doing $10 million a year with 10 employees, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we have a fantastic team here. I know everyone says that, but ours is the best. And I think you're onto something there where the number of people does correlate to the amount of progress you can have fast, right? So everyone, we still require everyone in office, which everyone actually likes, right? We have flexibility, but we also hired our first 3 people with unlimited vacation time because I don't know, like you're gonna come work with us, like we don't take vacations, so there's definitely going to be an inflection point here, probably at this next tranche of capital as we go into potentially like a Series A, where we expect things are going to change. So we cherish every day. We're in our side office on a building next to like a railroad company with no storefront, and we don't pay utilities. So
I love it.
All that is changing.
I
shortly.
Absolutely love it. Tristen, Grant and I have a lot of conversations with founders ranging the gamut, whether pre-seed, seeds, up to Series A level, because we run something called the Hardtech Venture Network as well. It's a part of Hive, which the Hardtech podcast is within. And we always go back and forth with each other on the different levels of founders we have conversations with. And we actually have a rubric that we put together because we send it out to the VCs, et cetera. It goes from like 0 to 3. And 0 is like probably not a fantastic founder for a series of reasons, as you could imagine, a great 0. And then 3 is like, hey, this is the person that you're going to bet on because this person's got it. And honestly, man, throughout this entire conversation, I'm not bearing the lead. You absolutely have it in so many ways. Just
Thank you.
It's been clear in your ability to lead, articulate the problem, and just even the way you've talked about solving problems. You said you're having fun. That was a fun problem to solve. Not everyone says that. But it does make solving problems that much more fun if you just trick yourself and lie to yourself that it actually is. So I think well done there. With all that in mind, one of the last questions I always love to ask is, if you had advice for a founder just like yourself starting out maybe 3.5 years ago or something like that, or they're in their sophomore or junior year of college and thinking about taking a leap to even potentially go as hard as not just doing something in Hardtech, but also in the medical field, what would that advice be?
Yeah, I think it has to be, you have to have a certain level of self-discipline if you're going to do it, but also you have to enjoy the journey, right? We were talking to founders at a summit just last week, and one of them sold recently for like, I'm not kidding, probably like $500 million. And when he was sitting there and, he was watching like his bank account, and it finally came in, like he showed his wife, and she literally looked at him and he was telling the story, and he's like, "Oh, cool. Can you go change our baby's diaper?" So it's like the end isn't the goal. The goal is the journey, and the goal is learning process. And if you can't like the journey about it, it's just too hard, right? If you don't like what you're doing every day, you're never going to be able to do something for 10 years where it takes 7 of those years potentially not to be paid and to get to that point of having a product that people don't hate. And then another year to get to a point where people like it. And then another couple of years to get to a place where someone loves it. You know what I mean? So just enjoy the journey. And if you're not enjoying the journey, then you're probably not either doing the right thing, or you might need to say, I want to get out of FDA regulation territory because that can be a headache. And let's go do something like B2C. Like, let's move fast. Let's iterate a software product every 24 hours, right? With this new AI stuff out there, you can do things like that. So yeah, just embrace the suck. Like, enjoy the journey. It's fun. It's the best learning possibility you could possibly have, right? You're never going to walk away with nothing, right? You're going to have always what your experiences have and what you've learned. And if you can do that and you have fun with it, for sure, I think that's the success or something.
No, I love that. I love that your story about the dollar sign on the scoreboard at the end of the day doesn't actually mean anything, right?
Yeah.
I think it's like when I have conversations with founders that are the happiest, it's always, this is how hard it was and how proud I am of me and my team for getting through, insert the suck here, right? This thing that happened to them that was difficult, or this big mission they got over. And I think that is the real magic in the journeys, is when you're getting to those points that every time you get through a hard thing, the team is like, that was incredible. I can't believe we survived that wild ride, or this vendor that dropped the ball, we picked it up and saved the date on the the delivery for the client. And it's one of those things, like, those are the stories that you retell over and over and over again. It was never, you remember that one quarter we made the most money? Like, that's never been the story someone tells at the dinner table.
Yeah, it's never like, no.
Honestly, I couldn't agree more. Sorry, go ahead, Tristen.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was just going to double back on what you guys are both saying. I also think that it's something to do with when you're striving for being a founder, doing founder mode is very difficult. You're playing at the extreme level. So therefore you have to be performing at an extremely high level. And I think it really ranges the gamut, whether you're trying to play an extreme level in the medical device space, you're doing it in product development. I mean, even on my side, like, I'd like to work at an extreme level on go-to-market kind of things. And I think if you're striving for anything at an extremely high level, then embracing the suck is actually the path to get there. To achieve these things that you really want to achieve, you actually just, if it sucks, you're probably doing it the right way. You just have to give it a little bit more time, which really sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's one of those things, like, with that extreme, the highs are really high and the lows are like, get a shovel. Like, there's no ground floor. We are continuing to go down. And the hardest thing, and Tris, I'd love to see if you've experienced this. The hardest thing isn't actually how high the highs are or how low the lows are. It's how rapidly you could swing between them. I think that is the thing that is the hardest, has been for me in my journey, the hardest to, like, really emotionally handle and take is, like, how like the velocity change between the highs and the lows. Like, the lows suck, but like, I've got a good team and we laugh about how bad it is. And the highs are phenomenal. We're all high-fiving and screaming up and down the hallways. But man, that rapid transition can be a tough day at home.
It happens so fast, and that's how you know you're doing something right. Like, if you're in a startup world, you shouldn't be doing things like that still, right? You're going to make so many mistakes and it's going to really suck. But you don't get from, one tranche of awesomeness to the other without, first in that valley. But yeah, it's definitely an emotional roller coaster, right? That's something that you don't really think when you get into it, like how mentally challenging it is just to maintain the stench flow of go to work every day and battle it. But it's for me, it's probably the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life as well. And like having 2 co-founders that are just absolutely killers. Like, they're way better than me in everything they do. And just, surround yourself with people that are better than you, because if you're the smartest person in the room, you're probably not doing it right either. It makes all the difference too. Like, you guys have emotional support for each other. It's like basically going into a marriage, right? We've been doing this for 5 years now, and we're just now raising like a pre-seed round. So the timelines is like almost like relationship or marriage.
Oh, and you're probably closer with your business partners than your actual romantic partners. Like I spend more time with my business partners than my wife,
Yeah,
which is crazy to think about. Like, but it's
it
incredibly
is
true,
crazy.
right?
Yeah, like
And
10 hours a day with these people, like sitting 6 feet from them,
when
right? At a minimum.
you can't tell me that you don't call one of them on the way home every night to catch up on that meeting that you had at the end of the day, right? Like that is just the
Yeah,
playbook.
yeah, it is.
But no, I think the fascinating thing about the other part of having like business partners is it's challenging from like getting everyone agreed and aligned and all that. But the amount of different perspective is so useful. If everyone's got imposter syndrome, you can actually just throw all the ideas on the table and knife fight about them until one of them wins.
Yeah,
And it's not like one person made the bad choice. It's no, we logically beat each other up, and this is the only surviving choice to go with today. And if it sucks and it was wrong, we did this together, right?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's that balance between toxic workplace culture and the term that I just recently heard, like soft ass company, is it's hard to find that. You know what I mean? Like, because you have to be cutthroat and you have to be able to defend your ideas because there's going to be so much stuff coming your way. But you also can't have the toxic workplace culture where nothing gets done and people hate coming here either. So finding that balance and duking it out with your co-founders and people you work with, where come close as family members, right? Or in my case, started a company with my brother, which, if you read all the books, is like the number one thing you're not supposed to do for whatever reason. But like, who else are you going to, convince to come work for you for free for 3.5 years, right?
Absolutely.
Like, it's kind of hard to find that person. But having the right people around you always makes the journey fun. And to me, that's the most important thing. Because at the end of the day, all you got is kind of like that journey and the learning experience thing. Especially if you want to be like a serial entrepreneur, it's like, what happens when you sell your next company? You just kind of dive right back in, right?
You got to embrace the journey, embrace the suck, hire people who are way smarter than you. Everybody, This is the Hardtech Podcast. I'm your host, DeAndre Harricus, with my co-host, Grant Chapman. And Tristen, thank you so much for being on the show. This is an absolute joy.
Thank you.